Well, good morning. I'm Cheryl Barth, relatively new to this group, but I think that you'll find today's speaker very interesting. I've done some volunteer work with this agency and worked with Cheri and she's become a dear friend of mine, and I have the utmost respect for what she does. She is the executive director for Operation Hope Prison Ministry. You're probably aware that Oklahoma has the dubious distinction of being one of the most highly incarcerated states in the country and the #1 for women. And our country is #1 in the world for per capita incarceration. So Cheri's going to talk to us about the organization, but even more importantly, I've asked her to speak to the issues around this, the whys, the hows, the buts, and what's been going on, and share some of the good news, because there is some good news going on too. In fact, there's recently a bill, I think it was, did you say just this past week was passed? So Cheri's going to share some of that with you. I've learned a heck of a lot that I didn't want to learn in working for this agency, but it's information we all need to be aware of. And with that, I'm going to welcome Cheri Buschman.
What did you do today, girls?
What did we go do, Torrance? We went to Grandma Peggy's.
Who did you visit?
Yeah. Who did you visit? Grandma Peggy.
Who did you visit?
Grandma Peggy.
Yeah? What did you get to do with Grandma Peggy?
We played games and we talked about what's going on in my life and about my mom. And I talked to her about school and a bunch of other stuff.
Good.
And we played games.
You played games and you had lunch together?
Yeah, we ate pizza.
Good. How did it feel to see Grandma Peggy today?
I cried.
Oh.
I'm Cheri Buschman. I'm glad to be here. No excuse for being late, right? Missing class. I guess I drew the short straw, you know, of your speakers. Like, that girl will get up early. Yes, I was up at 4:30, so. Okay. I have like this phobia of mics, but I'm going to get over it. Can you hear it now? Yee, okay. I talk with my hands, so it's hard for me to hold a mic and walk. And yeah. Okay. So what is we're gonna do some silly things just because Cheryl Barth told me that you were a fun group, and I believe you are. I know you're a hospitable group. Had a lot of help getting in the door today, but the prizes, don't get too revved up about them because I repurpose Operation Hope Prison Ministry prizes. So think about it. I'm from a prison ministry. What could be in the bags? But curiosity might get you to participate. What is one thing, or let's just do a couple notices. What was a takeaway? What picture struck you? I'm just interested. Any? Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry? Okay, thank you for noticing. Thank you for noticing. Driver's license. Hi, Lynn. I'm sorry? The children. Okay, I do have to say, because I'm not an expert in video and getting things put together, that little girl, I was on a bus going to the women's facility, Eddie Warrior, and I just used my camera and my phone, and it doesn't sync well with this laptop. However, they were visiting, did you hear, Grandma Peggy? And so Operation Hope was the only Tulsa agency that would take children, boys and girls, to go see their moms and grandmothers in Eddie Warrior, you know, to just go ahead and increase that bond. It was a whole day of pizza, like she said, and games. And my job was, one, just get us there safely. Two, these children are people that I hadn't met before because it was whoever was incarcerated at that time within the Tulsa area. And three, I was the quarter lady, which meant always bringing extra quarters. Inmates, which that's what they call these ladies when they're in prison, are allowed to step over a line. And what was beyond the line was the vending machines. And what do the children want to do, like a little mini casino maybe? They want to play the vending machines. And so mostly all day I would be saying, what do you want to choose to drink? What do you want to choose? Oh, the vending machine is broken. Let me go get a guard. That and changing diapers. You can't be alone in the bathroom if you're a mom and your babies come to visit you. So, you know, if it's your own, you can change diapers. But I felt so sad for the women that had been incarcerated. Some have given birth in prison, you know. And so when I asked that little girl, I said, how did it feel visiting Grandma Peggy? I don't know if you heard her. She said, I cried. So we used to bring stuffed animals so that we would stop at a park, kind of really just bring down some of the stress, the pressure. You see the women all lined up behind the razor fence, you know, and a big sign saying, do not talk. So I call it silent, you know, through silent kisses. So it was a great program. Cheryl said, this group was tough, rugged, and goes deep. I love that. I love that. I am thrilled and I'm grateful for that because oftentimes people think Operation Hope Prison Ministry, or me included in that, will bring every solution, and it's really not all fun and games, you know. The reality is there's a lot of things that are still broken. Oh, but God, right? Oh, but God. How about one or two more notices? Anything notice? Christmas trees, thank you. Well, I'll try to hit on a few things now and a few things later, but that's a historic Operation Hope Prison Ministry deal. We work with the Prison Fellowship. And they have men and women that are incarcerated in the state of Oklahoma. And we served this past December 103 children. And what that means is that the men and women in prison have to be on a level of behavior to participate. They get a form from their chaplain. Almost all of our work goes through the chaplain of every prison. It's just a nice connectiveness. You know, who is Operation Hope? The third party is our partners. So our partners are the chaplains. So they fill out this form. They say what they want their child to possibly receive. Usually it's one article of clothing, one toy, and maybe a book. So there's that. However, until recently, when I came on board, there's a lot to that process. We have to call the caregiver of these children, and guess what? Do you think all the caregivers of these children are like, oh, let me help you do this, let me help. I'm so excited. No, because a lot of people in prison have burned their bridges, and a lot of those caregivers many times are the grandparents. Many times are the grandparents, sometimes foster parents, sometimes an aunt, but they're kind of mad. They're a little angry. And so during that Christmas party that we hold and the kids finally come and they pick up, you know, just a bunch. You're awesome. Can we give them a clap? I don't sing nor dance very well, so I'm really grateful for IT people. They're a blessing. So they come, and then we do a workshop for the caregivers. Because is there struggle in raising those kids? Is there compensation? Talk about issues, raising those kids from the state? No. So that's my favorite thing to do. I get to talk with caregivers at the Christmas party, and I get to learn, and I get to walk into their life just for a minute. When we think, what can we do? I'm going to say 5 minutes engaged. Man, God will tell you. So one day it was a lady, she was a great grandmother caring for incarcerated 3 children, and she had just a run-in finding a new place to live. Then she had the expense of getting her gas hooked up. I don't have these kind of difficulties, but our people do. And so there's that hookup fee and all that. And she was behind. And she said, Cheri, actually, my gas is going to be turned off today. It's December, you know. So I said, well, we have a scholarship program. Historically, we had it only for men and women coming out of prison. We would afford monies that would allow them to purchase things for employment. Say steel-toed boots. We do a couple hundred of those every year. Welding supplies, if they're going to get a welding job, their employer has to prove that they have a job and all that good stuff. But then we added caregivers. And then now we added, the last couple years, children. We call it CHIP, Children of Incarcerated Parents. And it's lovely. And if you step in a little, you can't help but get creative a bit. So what are some of the things we've awarded in these scholarships for kids? 2 years ago, but it's one of my favorite examples, is that we paid for art classes. So the mom's husband's in prison. She has 3 girls. The oldest one is struggling in high school and suicidal. We've paid for counseling for kids, even though there's free counseling. Sometimes it's not the right counseling, and it's not the now counseling. So we can't wait. You know, I don't think we're called to wait. So this little girl, high schooler, took classes in Sand Springs. They have a Christian, I didn't know about it, art school. They were so impressed that she had gotten a scholarship from Operation Hope that they matched the scholarship, and she's been there for 2.5 years. She continues. She shows me her portraits. If I could have, I would have brought one of her paintings, but she's pretty running with full steam ahead, you know. And so just even things, I feel play is therapeutic. That's my background. Years ago, out of college, I was a park and recreation administrator. And I had my degree, certification in certified recreation therapist. So everything is therapeutic. So an art class is therapeutic. What else? We've paid fees for like entrance fees so kids can play soccer, cleats, we've paid for that. You know, what is going to engage that kid other than? So the Christmas party is just one example of us trying to reach 3 tiers: the inmate, the caregiver, and the child. And it's just a cool thing. If you want to come out next year, it's usually the first Saturday of every December. Those slides show that we always provide a hot meal for the day, and it's just kind of fun to hang out because the kids are they're hams. I mean, they'll you know, what I do is my friend who's a photographer takes pictures, and then she quick sends them to me. I get them copied at Walgreens, and I send them to them so that they could have a Christmas picture of their family to put on the refrigerator, and just that is so meaningful to them. Okay, one more. What did you notice? Education. Okay. Education. So, all right. That's a big topic, and maybe I'm kind of I'm going to go for it anyway. It's in part 3 of my speech today, but education is a big thing, obviously. We don't really work with the kids too much with education. In my former job, we had getting children up to a reading level of the 4th grade because that's very important. In Minnesota, they plan their prisons according to the 4th grade reading level scores of the children. So if they're under 4th grade reading level, they know how many prisons to go ahead and think that they're going to need to build. That's how important, you know, reading is. Most of our inmates read on a 3rd grade level, and that's a statistic that, you know, just marries that other statistic. But we do owe God, and post-incarceration, when they come to Operation Hope, this is something relatively newer in our services, is that we have someone that specializes in higher education, which is one way to go. You'll meet Sean in a few minutes, and he's on a PhD track, you know. Hey, my people are smarter than me, I'm just going to tell you right now. Now, sometimes I used it not in a good way, but, you know, I think they're on a right track now. But a lot of times we're being able to marry grants that are out there, funding, most of our funding is private, for people to connect with vocational training. So right now there's a grant, it might end this year, and then we'll go scrambling for dollars, but it's called Oklahoma Prosper. And because we have a new employment specialist, formerly retired federal parole officer, you know, I scan for the new retirees. So if you're new, you kind of duck down because I'm gonna lock in. But anyway, she's done a phenomenal job in getting us the partners needed to fund the education that will be more sustainable jobs. Well, they'll sustain their life better with a livable wage job. So Operation Hope, when you come out of prison, you come to us, and I think we're going to do our first, these tickets, you have to put in a little container. But you better put your initial on the back real quick if you have a ticket. Let's see, let's get a few more tickets out. Okay, let me test that statistic. Do you know someone that's incarcerated? Anybody else? Oh, my statistic's going to fail in this class, 1 to 3. And 98% of those incarcerated will be coming back into the community. But no more knowing anybody incarcerated? Okay. So you're going to collect and then pull one. Will you please? I am. Let's do it. Did anyone else get a ticket and put your little initial on it and put it in the glass bucket? Okay. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to ask Kay to come up to the class. So one of the first things you'll get when you come to Operation Hope, we served over 600 people. We are known for our backpacks, but they've gotten a little heavier. Would you say they're heavy, Kay? Yes, that's heavy. Okay. Cheryl, would you kind of help Kay and go ahead and pick out a few items and shout it out. Yay!
And hand sanitizer. Shampoo, soft soap, conditioner, Kleenex, more Kleenex.
Awesome.
It's kind of like a travel
Yeah.
dermacell.
Razor blades,
Right.
female products.
Right.
I guess that's
Okay. I think, okay.
Look at there, a little notebook.
Sometimes if we have devotionals or something, that goes in there. Depends on our stock, so to speak. Well, thank you so much. Now, the challenge is, Kay, that you can't give that back to me. So you have to go ahead and give it forward. And I don't know how you're going to do that.
I'm going to
but
give it to McClure.
there you go. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. So I forgot to pray. So let me do that, will you? And right now I'm reading Matthew Kelly, Rediscover the Saints. Great. He's a really good author. I enjoy him. So, Father of all creation, show us the power of your love in new and special ways. Open our hearts and minds to receive your love in all the ways you want to share it with us. And allow your love to flow through us to others, so that by knowing us, they might come to know you and your love a little more. Amen. So I said, who was Operation Hope? And I think we've gone through a few, but also I love your worship music. That was so encouraging this morning. I usually play it on my phone when I'm getting ready. One is my board and my advisors. So instead of just going down a list, which I think I have some information up there if you'd like it, I will just tell you a little bit about their whys. So I have, it's in here. My board chairman is Clancy Smith. She is a retired judge. For the appellate court. She served for nearly 40 years in Tulsa, a lot. So when we interview for board members, you know, I'm the one that asks you why. Why Operation Hope, you know? Why put more time in? She has grandchildren, and she has things to do. She has a second house, you know. Why Operation Hope? And she said, well, Cheri, when I was a judge, and I can attest to this, I've just been in the courtroom last Thursday, there was 50 plus people on my docket, sometimes 60. Tulsa County issue, crazy. That's crazy. You go out to an outskirt community from Tulsa, you might get 10. And she said, you know, I had to get through my daily docket, and so I just kept it moving. Everybody got a few minutes of my time. I tried to do my homework and did the best job I could. But today my why is, I didn't give them the time they deserved. So let me serve in this capacity, and let me hear it, let me talk with people, let me be engaged, and so let me donate my time. And I thought, wow, that's a great why. I think God kind of pulls up our why. We either feel it or we don't. Another person, this is kind of like on the other side. One, I'm not going to use the names. So one is a geologist by trade, or profession, and he also headed up a state organization, Oklahoma State for Rational Sex Offender Laws, for years. he had been incarcerated. And then I have another board member who has been incarcerated, who did 3 tours of Vietnam. He also was, what do you call, like a drill sergeant? You could tell, you can kind of tell. But anyway, so he did that, and then he decided that veterans were very important to him. And you know what? Incarcerated veterans is a population that's kind of marginalized and that we help. So his why is, let me come in and help veterans that are incarcerated. Do we have any veterans today in the audience? Thank you for your service. Thank you. Did you see the dogs in the slideshow? So, unfortunately, that program ceased right after COVID. The training room got closed at Jackie Brandon Correctional Center. COVID changed a lot of things for us, and also changed wardens. And no matter what the political climate is, I play to the warden. They either care about programming, spiritual programs, ministries, or they really don't. Some of them are on their fast track out, and so they don't really want to take the time. However, I just have to, for the veterans here, tell you quickly what that program was. And who's to say, maybe we'll be again one day. But it was incarcerated veterans for 3 years, trained fully dogs to be service dogs. And they weren't just therapy dogs, they were service dogs. So I would go in and look at the training and try to, I facilitated that program. We raised money for that program. The Hardesty Foundation was one of our funders for that program. Anyway, they had a big training room, and you got to see the dogs doing all this stuff. But what amazed me, and you already know things about dogs and how great they are, but that a lot of the veterans, that needed them, these dogs were going to graduate in a year and be given to a disabled veteran in the community. It was great. And so if that veteran was having nightmares, PTSD, if that veteran was disabled and needed his medication out of his refrigerator, I watched the dogs train for that. That is just phenomenal. My favorite part, which was a teary-eyed part, was the graduation. Because of COVID, and certainly they're not going to let the incarcerated veterans out of prison, but we had to go to a VFW hall, and they hosted the event, so all the people getting those dogs and their families were there. And instead of, usually they go to the prison, and it's a warm handoff, so then the incarcerated veterans wrote letters. Many of the men receiving the dogs chose to read the letters aloud. I was done for. Dignity. That's the basis of our mission statement, and I kind of feel you all own that for people. So even an inmate, we're thinking, how can we translate dignity, worthy of honor and respect? And so for an incarcerated veteran, the fact that he was able to do something for someone else, that he had worked very hard and knew that they all fall in love with their dogs, that they were going to be going, in a short period of time, and they honored veterans. They were still that brotherhood of veterans. They had still served our country, And so that was my very favorite part. Let me tell you a little bit more about board. I have a board member that's a criminal defense attorney, and he donates some of his time. He also golfs, and that's a big ticket item for me. Are there any golfers in the room? Oh, I'm going to give you a ticket. Just a minute. We've got more to come. I'm going to just... Oh, and veterans. Would you mind passing these out, Cheryl? Raise your hand if you're a veteran or a golfer. Oh, you got one over here. Stan Monroe, he's been around for a while. He's that board member, and he is just, I said, Stan, what's your why? And he said, because I know how to do this, and I've seen it done badly. And so if you need me, I'm here. And sometimes he just counsels. Yeah, right in the chair. Sometimes he just counsels, and then sometimes he takes it all the way. And that's phenomenal. Let's see, I have Buster James Hall. He's multi-talented. I'm thinking I'm going to grab him off of the board and come into committee with me for this year. He is a teacher teaches criminal law at Northeastern. He's finishing his Methodist ministry degree. He's an attorney. He was a hostage negotiator, United Nations security guy, and a Tulsa policeman. So, and that's Dr. Hall. We have a lot of people with PhDs, but I think Marvin said the funniest thing about that post-hole digger. I never heard that before, and that's what Marvin said about his degree. And I'm like, Marvin, another thing about Marvin, I knew you had to be a good group, a funny group. Cheryl said you like jokes. Because Marvin, yes, when you look at him, it's kind of a poker face, right? But just walk with him, just like our people. And so I did one day, and I said, Marvin, you were a big construction guru. Would you please come look at a building that maybe we're able to buy? I have people that have 100% housing insecurity. If I get to it later, I hope I do. I'll talk about it then. So anyway, Marvin comes along. We're in Sand Springs, you know, in an area that have more pit bulls than people. And so he's like, oh. So we get out, and he doesn't say too much. We're walking through this apartment building, kind of pushing back the electrical cords that are hanging down and hitting us in the head, and jumping over cracked cement and foundations. And you know, I've been accused of being a Pollyanna, so I'm like, you know, can you fill in the cracks of this? Well, maybe if we do this, and maybe if we do that. And he didn't say too much until at the end. He did a one-liner, which is my favorite jokes. And I said, Marvin, what do you think? And he said, Cheri, I think we need to look for something else, because when guys come out of prison and take a look at where they're going to live, they'll probably request to go back. And I'm like, that was great. That was great. And dignity, if we don't want to put people in a bad place. So I will tell you one more thing about that geologist. I'm not going to use his name. He represents a marginalized population, and I've always worked for that type of population, be it in the park districts in DuPage County, at-risk youth, severely, profoundly handicapped children. And I've been their cheerleader, but mostly people want, you know, to build things like new buildings and new schools, and I jump on that bandwagon. And here's an issue question. So he goes to church, he and his wife. They have a son. She's been rather ill lately, and he's her primary caretaker. They're up in age. I no longer, I'm smart enough, I don't even guess. I don't even say what I think they are. But anyway, they're up in age. And we were talking about persons coming out of prison that have had a conviction for a sex crime. So I'm going to step into that. Now, there's many different types. Urinating in public, get arrested, and then you become a sex offender. I don't use that word. I use registered citizen, because they have to register for a period of time. Even if you urinated and they prove that that's all you were doing, you'd have to register. And my driver's license, I put that up there to remind me that if that were me, I would have those two words stamped right on front of my license, and that was sex offender. So when I go into Walmart and I want to spray paint a vase or something, and they ask for my driver's license, that 16-year-old clerk looks at me and says, oh, shoot, she's a sex offender. Really, and I have to register every year at least, and a lot of my people have to go every month. And so as this geologist would point out, sometimes that really interferes for them to get a good job because they have to take time out to register. They have to, another professional person I know that has been there said, and we have to pay for that renewal of our license every year. I mean, that's minor from what really happens to most of my people, and that they don't have a place to live. Now, I'll tell you a funny one. I had a board member, his name was Al Nordine. He was a veteran, and he was really involved in incarcerated veterans. And he got a little bit older. His wife finally retired, and he's like, hey, I'm going to come and go as I please, but I'm not going to be a full-time board member. But he did share this story about he worked for, I think it was Lexus, and he had a guy work for him, a young guy, and he's doing great. And he's like, why don't you get a house? You're making enough money. And he said, I can't get a house. On my license, it says sex offender. He said, what? You are my ace salesman. Are you kidding me? And he said, yeah. In my college years, we were all, had a few drinks, jumped in the car, and I mooned a cop. And so that will get you sex offender on your driver's license. So yes, and I'm not ever inferring that I want to bring you on board. I want you to love everyone, just like I'm commanded to do. I want you to love everyone. I think out of love, we come up with best solutions and best practices. And we're not talking about trying to bring people in that we know or is going to have a problem to reoffend, more or less. But that class of people have the lowest recidivism rate than if they had that crime. Their highest, the reason why they go back to prison oftentimes, most times, is because they can't find a place to live, and you have to register your address, and if you don't, you get picked up, and the POs play you like a yo-yo, and a lot of those guys go back to prison or live under threats and women. But let me tell you who else has that stamped on their driver's license, and that is women. I call it the spouse in the house, and that refers back to that law that they did pass last week, saying the law was a justice reform, and it was that women that have been abused, and then if they've been abused and then charged with child abuse because their husband was the perpetrator, the judge will now hear that as mitigating evidence, because more than likely the perpetrator in the house, I'm just going to think of one instance and go from there, was the dad. The woman, it was the granddaughter, was sexual abuse. The grandmother was Operation Hope. I walk deep with these cases, I don't just sit in my office, by far. And she's like, well, where do I live? What do I do? She was shell-shocked. She had a trust fund. She had a nice house. She said, I wasn't aware of what was going on, and when I did, I reported it. Whatever the case, I deal with the people that something fell through. Sometimes it's legitimate, maybe sometimes not, but this, I would say, was legitimate. And so she ended up, her husband was able, he put their house, used his house for collateral, and so he posted bond with their house, that really nice big house, South Tulsa. And of course, he skipped town. Found him 2 days later, not too bright. Criminals are bright. This guy couldn't make it. Anyway, she served more time than he did, and that's not even uncommon. So she gets sex offender on her driver's license. I work with them because at first they're incensed. What do you mean? And then you get to go to whatever district you're in, and you get to talk to those boys. Some are nice, some aren't. And sometimes they'll, go in. They're shell shocked. They're just out of prison. She stayed with the chapel people. Most of my women are God-fearing women, and really, oh my gosh, probably know their Bible better than I do. So anyway, they just terrorized her. And I'm like, well, shoot, let's figure out where you can live. There is no place for them to live in Tulsa, not for women. There's 2 places that house men with restrictions. A lot of our men, we partner with an organization in Oklahoma City. So, you have trauma. Most women had that trauma going into prison, and the statistics would say that, but sure as shooting, when you're coming out, you really have that trauma. So we offer now trauma therapy and try to find places or pay first month rent in places where they can find some habitable place to live. Oftentimes it's rural, oftentimes it doesn't have running water. I mean, I could tell you story after story and story. And so it's what I say, housing insecurity. I don't consider that a house if you're out somewhere where you don't have transportation, you're away from your family. There are so many restrictions that go along with that registration. And so we're one of the states, of course we have the strictest restrictions, and really all of the 2,000 feet thing is, from education, school, or place of education. I get that, people. I mean, I get that. Oh my gosh. But I'm going to say there's no study been done that says that's an effective way to control or police it. So here's my drop downs, and then I'll try to hit the other things. But one, if you dare to put your email on that list, if there's some changes or there's some things that you want some information, I'd be happy to do it since I didn't cover everything. But registration is public instead of law enforcement. I'd rather it be law enforcement. We deal with law enforcement all day long. I'm good with that. The issue that I wanted to bring back full circle, I'm sorry, is what is your church's policy on accepting ex-felons, and what is the process? I don't really need to know that answer. I'm just asking you the question. So for that geologist, you know what he does? And I'm going to say his name is Sam, but it's not. But when you watch him walk, he's been out of prison like 30 years. I invite his wife sometimes when I have a meeting with him because they're poor. They're educated, but they have so little. Usually I'm like, do you want to take something home for later? Because his role at his little church in Tulsa is this. You're a new member, Mike, and you come in. Sam clears his schedule. He goes over to your house or at the church and he says, "Hi, I'm Sam and I'm a sex offender." Is Sam a sex offender? That's my question to you. It's a lifetime sentence that we really have to put a little more thought. I'm all for bad boys and bad girls having bad things like that happen. I mean, I'm okay with that. I am okay with that. I have children and I have personal experience, but I'm okay with that. But for this geologist, this good old boy that hardly can get around anymore, can we take it off his driver's license? Isn't there a step-down program for good behavior, that we can do? So really, he does that every time. So I'm sure, like, if there's a newcomer, like Cheryl did for me, she said, "Do you want to go out to lunch?" That's great. That's hospitality, So for Sam, those people are probably like, "Oh my gosh, I'm never going to take him out to lunch." He and his wife. I'm never going to want to associate with that. So I am a resource. If there's more discussion you'd like to have in that area, There's times that I haven't even read Sam's old DOC papers. I don't even know what he did, and I'm sorry, I don't care. I went by his education. I went by his experience. I went by his professional impact for a population that I need help with. So, and why should you, I guess one of the things, why should we care and what can we do, is that if you make an impact in one person's life, you know that trickle effect, right? For that little girl on the bus, really all those volunteers do is just get their DOC badge and drive the bus and hang out with them, push them on the swing, you know, in the spring. What bigger things that are coming up for Operation Hope, and I wanted to make a sales pitch, but I don't know how to do that real fast, is that I just spent the last week a couple days with the Standards of Excellence for Oklahoma Center for Not-for-Profits. We already belong to that. I guess we already did that rodeo like 15 years ago. Operation Hope's been around 25 years. But there's a lot more to it these days. And so there's a lot more thinking. So one takeaway was, how many people have ever served on a board or have meetings that have agendas? Anybody? There we go. I got you on that one. Oh, Cheryl, tickets. I got to get the prizes in. No, the people that have been on a board need a new ticket. More tickets. Here, you can do. I don't care.
That's everybody, isn't it?
Well, that's good because I've got a few more prizes. Okay, so I'll make. And I had jokes, but I didn't get to them. So one takeaway was that the facilitator said, you know, you pass the minutes, you know, last meeting's minutes, the director's report, even the financial report. Of course, I'm going to keep that separate. All the program reports. She said, that's history. That's gone. It's done. Well, yeah, duh. Yeah, it's done. So she talked about generative conversations. And that's where, I know this is fast and furious, but if you just give some prayer to that, I need minds and hearts to sit on a time-restrictive, we might have 2 questions for that little subcommittee. I want your input because we need to do lots of some of it's policy, but some of it will affect the people coming to Operation Hope in the future. So max hour and a half a month, max. I just want to engage you. There's lots of ways. I'm going to just, how many minutes do I have? It's probably, okay, and I have prizes yet to do. So most of our people are poor. 99%. I didn't get to tell you a little bit about the interns. However, there's information over there. Our internship program. There's one guy that is my intern, the one that's on a PhD track. He didn't come in poor, but 99% of our people are poor. And I wondered if you knew what the poverty level guidelines were, and I just thought I'd mention it. For a family of one, $12,880, and I'm going to jump up to a family of 4, which would be our newest intern, Kenitha, and her 3 little boys, family of 4, and her income, that income is $26,000 a year. So poor is pretty poor, let's put it that way, right? So our interns stay with us for a year plus. One thing is that we wrap our arms around it in a faith-based community. You could be a little part of that. It could be like taking an intern out to lunch. How hard is that? But do you know how meaningful your engagement with one person would be? You have no idea. I get people, when I offer them cream or sugar in their coffee because they've been in prison for 20 years, they're like, excuse me? I'm like, yeah, cream, real cream, or sugar. Well, is that okay? Yeah, you're supposed to be free today, right? Dignity can be spelled so many ways. I really need you guys. I'm also just going to do a shameless plug. The golfers, you know who you are. Bob Carpenter, he was in that picture with the guy from Regent Bank who was a sponsor. The Carpenters have done a golf outing for us for 15 years, like raised $750,000 over those years. Guess what? They had grandchildren. What do you think's happening to Bob Carpenter this year? Come on, win a ticket. Help me out. Do you think Bob's doing the 16th year? No. No. But he keeps calling me and saying, well, I'll bring a team. I'll do this. I'll do this. Anyway, so I'm going to have to, in August, I hope to have a golf tournament. So if you're a little bit interested, one of our speakers, the guy, Sean, just got a job. That's his big face. He smiled a lot in the slides, but he just got a job at the U.S. Aviation. He's on his halfway through his master's program. Again, he'll be a PhD kind of guy. He's a brainiac, and he's a sole caregiver for his elderly mother. He was a Napa Valley kid back in the day. He had all the money in the world. His parents were alcoholic. He never complains, but, you know, he was left unattended and really didn't have much to go on, and so he found the P word. I don't know. How deep can I go? Pornography. Okay, and so that's against the law. So let me tell you, I work for giants. I have some stories, please read them, and let's go ahead and pull some tickets. The prize is going to get better, the second one. Jan? Who? Jan, where are you? Okay, this is a leftover from our gala, which, hey, if you like to party, let me know. But I hear it goes better aged, so there you go. And because we are a sober organization, I'm like, why do I have this stuff in my office still? Okay. Okay, so now, you know, I overthink everything. I actually didn't look at my notes, but I worked on them for 7 hours. So here's was the first pick, but if you don't like it, I'm giving you the second pick. I know you love it. Woo woo. Are you sure? Okay. It was a leftover, and I don't know if beer ages well or not. I don't know. But it was Wes Alexander donated beer from Marshall Brewing. Keep going. Just go one more. I've got to give you a pick because you're a guy. Do you want that's, you know, St. Patrick's Day, or do you want snacks? No. Okay, one more. Mike, going once. I think I put him to sleep in the back row. Oh. That is it, huh? Okay. Do you want, this is a 2-minute, I'm saying my goodbyes and pressing the button. Is that okay? That is great. Okay, so for Operation Hope last year, 82% were men, 18% were women. The median age was 43. We served over 2,000 people. 600 came in for reentry purposes. We do things, and here's just another engagement idea. If you're a woman, you're in prison, it's Christmas. There's so many things I can't send them. You can't send them pens. You can't send them a stamp, because you put drugs on that sticky part. You can't send them a lot of things, but we do calendars, nice stationery. We can only afford 2 pieces of nice stationery, an envelope, puzzles, because a lot of the times I get to know this, not that I've been incarcerated, thank God, I've done a lot of things, but that one, you know, I'm hoping I never have to check that box. But they have to stay in their bunks. They stay in their bunks because, you know, there's not too many guards during the holidays, and so they just have them, you know, that's 24 hours except for breaks for eating and going to the bathroom. So we do puzzle things like on paper. Anyway, it costs $1,000 what we do. We just do a lot of things. We do clothing for women coming out of prison. It has to be new, and I'm, yay. What you didn't pull out of that backpack is underwear. I'm a big person, like, really? We can't afford new underwear for these guys? And now we stepped it up, and we buy them a pair of new jeans. I figure new underwear. The women's bras are all one size fits all. You can hold them up to the light and, know what voltage your light bulb was. But anyway, we figured we'd start with dignity, use that word, and thread it through. And if I can do this.
Bedtime Stories is an outreach of Operation Hope Prison Ministry, where we go into the prisons and record the fathers and grandfathers recording the books to their children and grandchildren. We then take those books and transcribe them onto a CD and place a CD with the book and ship the whole thing out to the children.
My name is Billy. I was incarcerated for 15 years. I spent the entire time at Dick Connors Correctional Center. I've got 7 children, 14 grandkids. 13 of them was born while I was incarcerated. I missed being with my family. I've been doing bedtime stories since they brought it to Dick Connors, about 5.5 years. I've seen some of the toughest guys on the yard break down and make voices and follow the kids' stories, and it seems like they just get lost in the book as they're reading it. I would like to say that when my grandson came to visit me, he looked at me and was kind of confused about who I was, but whenever he heard my voice, and it was the voice that matched the CD, he automatically knew who I was. And that's something very special for me, because that encouraged me to keep doing right and to keep helping others and to keep moving on. This is one of the best programs I've seen in prison, and people do appreciate what y'all's doing for us. It gave us a brand new relationship that I could have never had without Bedtime Stories.